Welcome to another chilling tale where breaking the rules could cost you everything. Tonight, a man faces terrifying forces after defying a sinister ritual. But before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more spine-tingling stories. Stay tuned and enjoy the suspense. 9 rules for the night shift on Halloween night at the cemetery. You sure you have all the rules memorized? My boss said as he gathered up his belongings to go home. Yeah, sure thing. I got them all up here, I said as I pointed to my head. He gave me a nod and headed out the door of the small office to go home. My boss was a little off, to say the least. This was my first month as a security guard at a cemetery right around the corner from my residence, and I had just graduated college about 3 months ago. The last month of shifts had been boring, sitting around checking cameras and doing rounds through the cemetery, making sure nothing was out of order. Exciting, right? I needed a source of income, and this was the best paying job I could find. No real experience needed, the flyer said. My take was that they were desperate to find someone fast, so I took advantage of that. I was hired the day I found the flyer over the phone. I never even found out the guy's name. Once I came in on my first day, my boss gave me no training, no do's or don'ts, just a verbal list of 9 rules I had to follow and memorize before Halloween night. These rules are to be followed only on Halloween night, he said. You must follow these rules to the exact way they are told to you. If you mess up even a small part, well, you won't mess up because I trust you to follow them word for word. I looked at him confused, because this sounded almost like a threat. Nevertheless, I pulled out my phone and started an audio recording so we could record the list once he finished telling me the rules. I was in absolute disbelief. This guy's insane. No wonder why no one wants to work here. This guy is actually insane, I thought to myself. I know every place has to follow certain rules, but to designate a set of rules, insane rules, for Halloween night only? I guess you won't know how I felt until I tell you the rules that he gave me, word for word, exactly how he told me. Straight from the recording. Rule number 1. On Halloween night, please arrive at 8:30 p.m., no earlier, no later. Do not walk in these doors until it reaches 8:30. For the love of God, please. Rule number 2. Stay inside the office until 9:15. Do not leave. Keep yourself occupied, but do not check the security cameras during this time. I'll make sure to turn them off before you get there, so there is no temptation to peek at them. This might be one of the most important rules. If the monitor turns on by itself, do not look. Either. If for some reason you look and you see that it has revealed a section of the cemetery, you must turn off the lights in the office and hide. If it reveals the BRC section and you look at it, your only option is to run. Good luck with this. To make this easier, just cover the monitor with a jacket or blanket because you will not want to see what happens out here this time on Halloween night. Rule number 3. After 9:15 strikes, you will have 30 seconds to get out of the office. Leave the door unlocked. It is possible you will pass an unnaturally tall figure with no facial features. This is not a Halloween costume. Then you must tell him good evening and look him right where his eyes would be. If he doesn't respond, continue on your way to patrol the cemetery. If he says anything at all, you must stand completely still. Do not move a muscle. He might walk around to you but if you keep still until he's done, he should walk away with no problem. Go into the office and he will slam the door behind him. Rule number 4. You will make your way to Section A. Once you inspect Section A, you will realize the gravestone titled James R. Hackney is being dug up completely. This is not out of the ordinary. Do not, and I mean do not, pay any attention to what is inside the 6-foot hole in the ground. You will not see the rest of your shift if you look down in that hole. Just keep walking to Section B and do not look back. Rule number 5. As soon as you cross the bridge from Section A to B, You will notice about a dozen shadow-like figures standing around in a circle around the big oak tree to the left of the bridge. Please listen closely to what I'm about to say. You must find the figure wearing the black top hat. You will walk up behind him and ask, "Am I clear?" If you hear a voice from inside your head say, "Continue," then you can carry on to Section B. If you don't hear anything, you must wait. You can look over to the section at this time, but I recommend keeping your eyes down. Trust me, there will be no physical harm to you if you look, but I can't promise you will be emotionally intact after looking. Rule number 6. Once you get the go-ahead, continue on to Section B. You may walk around and do what you would normally do every night here. The only catch is, you must stay in this section until 10. It should be 9:30 to 9:45 by now, so you won't have to wait long. After the time crosses 10, continue on. Rule number 7. After walking out of Section B, you will notice a strange temperature change and lighting change. The time will have jumped to 2 a.m. After crossing, don't panic, and please do not answer your phone. Your phone will be ringing constantly. As soon as it starts ringing, you will stand still and not move until it stops. It will be calls from your mother, father, siblings, girlfriend, boyfriend, anyone you can think of. You must not answer these calls. It is not actually them calling. It is, in fact, the man that you saw earlier, the one with no facial features. He's trying to lure you back to the office. You must stay away from that office until I tell you to go back. Your phone will stop ringing after about half an hour, which leaves you at around 2:30 a.m. You can continue on at this point. Rule number 8. You will notice another time jump. This one, 2 more hours from 2:30 to 4:30. If the time still says 2:30 after the call stops, you're in trouble. Unfortunately, there is nothing you can do here. You messed up a step at some point. If you end up here, you can finally finish your inspection of Section C. You must be prepared for a woman covered in blood to run up to you begging for help. She'll be asking you where her baby is and if you can come fast to help her. Do not be startled, no matter how loud she yells. Tell her you'll meet her outside the cemetery in 10 minutes for her to wait there. She will run off in the opposite direction, and that's how you know you succeeded. There will be a lot of towels and rags all over the ground covered in blood around Section C. This is the only maintenance you will have to do. Just pick them up and dispose of them in the waste bin closest to you. Rule number 9. After completing this final task, you must run back to your office. Do not look anywhere but ahead of you. You will see figures everywhere. You will hear your name being called from voices that you think you recognize. Just keep running. Once you reach the office, you will see the faceless man leaving the office building. It should be 5 a.m. at this point. He will stop you and either say, "Good work," and nod at you, and you will slowly walk into the office and close the door. For the remainder of your shift, you can check the cameras, sit down, and go on with your shift until I come inside to start my shift. Or he would say, "Come with me." If he says, "Come with me," you will run and lock yourself in the office. Do not fall for his calm, monotone voice. He is anything but calm. If you mess up, do not let him in and wait for him to stop banging on the door. Once this stops, cover your eyes for the last hour of your shift. Don't look around until you hear 3 knocks on the door. This will be me to relieve you of your shift. You won't be called in for a few weeks to come to terms with what you have seen, and you will be paid a handsome amount of money for your duties. Now that you have listened to the rules as well, I hope you can understand my initial suspicion and why I was so baffled. I thought this was a joke until I finished my shift. After I arrived at 8:30, my boss laughed and I decided I was just going to follow the rules given to me to humble him and be a good sport on the prank. I didn't check the cameras and I headed out the door. After going outside, the brisk, full air hit me as I saw a tall man walking up to me. I looked at him, and he was actually faceless. It looked so real and kind of gave me the creeps. I almost forgot to tell him, "Good evening." He looked at me. Well, I think he did. and continued on through the door. I shivered a little as I headed on, straight to Section A. I arrived at the entrance and I searched for James R. Hackney's grave, a grave I always saw as it was the biggest one there. To my disbelief, it was actually being dug up. I felt sick to my stomach that they would go this far to scare me, so I hurried past the grave as a wave of uneasiness came over me. This can't be real, I reassured myself as I headed across the bridge to Section B. I scanned for the oak tree, and when I finally found it, I noticed the figures my boss warned me about. I instantly spotted the one with the top hat. I unsteadily scurried over to him and asked, "Am I clear?" No answer. As I stood there waiting for an answer that never came, I decided to look away from the man and peek over to Section B because surely the pranksters wanted me to look since they warned me against it. I froze and felt pins in my throat as I saw it. 1,000 gravestones covered in fresh blood. None of them had names. I looked back to find the man gone. I quickly rushed to Section B, my heart racing as I tried to shake off the terrifying sight. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look back at the blood-soaked gravestones. The air was thick and every step felt heavier than the last. I reminded myself that I was just following the rules, trying to do what was asked of me. The temperature dropped drastically as I entered Section B, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The cemetery, which was always eerily quiet, now seemed suffocating. I glanced at my watch. It was 10 p.m., just as the rules had stated. I didn't want to waste any more time, so I began my patrol of Section B, trying to keep my nerves in check. But then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of my phone vibrating in my pocket. I froze. I knew the rules. Do not answer the phone. The ringing continued, growing louder with each passing second. I stood still, doing my best to ignore it, my pulse quickening as I felt the presence of something nearby. I glanced down at my phone. The caller ID showed Mom. I felt a pang of anxiety in my chest. It had to be a prank. My mom wasn't calling me at this hour. I turned away, determined not to answer it, but my hand hovered over the screen. My phone continued to vibrate, the ringing louder now as if it was somehow calling me toward something. "Don't answer," I whispered to myself, repeating the rule in my head. I clenched my fists and kept my eyes ahead, ignoring the growing urge to pick up the call. The ringing finally stopped and I sighed in relief. But the peace didn't last long. I looked up, and there, standing just at the edge of the cemetery, was the faceless man. He was tall, impossibly tall, his figure shrouded in shadow. He didn't move, but somehow, I felt his presence like a weight pressing down on me. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't remember the next step of the rules, but my mind raced, trying to recall what I was supposed to do next. Then, it clicked. I needed to get back to the office. I turned around and began to walk back across the cemetery, my footsteps quick and unsteady. My phone buzzed again, but I ignored it. I had to get back. The air grew colder and the shadows seemed to stretch and warp, twisting into shapes I couldn't comprehend. I was almost to the office when I heard the voice. It wasn't my mom this time. "Come with me," the voice said, low and haunting, like it was coming from deep within the earth. I stopped in my tracks, panic setting in. I recognized the voice. It was the faceless man. I had heard the rule, and I knew what I had to do. I didn't dare turn around. I couldn't let him catch me. I picked up the pace, running as fast as I could. The cemetery blurred around me as I sprinted, the man's voice growing louder with every step. "Come with me," he whispered again. I reached the door of the office and slammed it shut behind me, my breath ragged and shallow. I leaned against the door, heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The world outside was silent now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I glanced at my watch. It was 5 a.m. A knock came at the door. 3 sharp raps. I froze. It was him. I knew it. I didn't dare open the door. I couldn't. I waited, holding my breath, until the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. I listened intently, hearing nothing but my own heartbeat in my ears. Then, the door opened. It wasn't the faceless man. My boss stepped into the room, looking at me with a knowing smile. "Good work," he said, nodding at me. "You made it." I sighed in relief, but there was no joy in it. I had done everything right, but the fear and terror still clung to me like a shadow. "You're done," he said. "You're finished. But it's not over. Not for you. You'll be back next year. For more." I stood there in silence, trying to wrap my mind around what had just happened. But before I could speak, the door slammed shut behind me and I was alone.